Good evening all and welcome to this Strategic Scrutiny Committee. Again, we're holding things virtually in accordance with government legislation thanks to COVID. A year on now pretty much since this all began and we're still behind our computer screens, which is nice. It's quite an interesting agenda this evening. We've kind of got one main item to discuss, and it's a really important item to discuss. And we're going to hear from Superintendent Anthony Hart, and we've got Simon Lane here as well from Exeter City Council to support us in that. And it's a really rare opportunity to actually question an outside body of the council, but a body that actually does a lot of work with us and does really important work in and around the city, keeping us all safe and well, really. So we'll come on to that later on. We'll go through the usual agenda items before that. So first thing I have to do is approve and sign minutes of the last meeting held on the 21st of January.
Sorry, Chair, we just have to do a roll call as well.
Sorry, I've skipped to 2. Yeah, sorry, do it. Please do a roll call.
Can you get on?
Sorry, I will. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Could I ask the members in attendance to state you're present when I call your name? Councillor Sills.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Newby.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Branston. I'm not sure if you just can't unmute, Councillor Branston. Yeah.
Present, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Boswell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaford.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb. Councillor Diana Moore.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jemima Moore.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Packham is joining us later, I understand.
I'm present now, Sharon.
Oh, sorry, I can't. I'm sorry, I couldn't see. We also
Thank
have a
you.
number of portfolio holders in attendance.
You've forgotten me, Sharon.
Oh, I do apologise, Councillor Lyons.
That's all right.
That's my old list. I do. Councillor Lyons, Rachel Lyons.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much. We also have a number of portfolio holders in attendance to answer any questions put to them under Standing Order 20 at item 6 on the agenda. I'm afraid I can't see you on the screen, but I know Councillor Bialik, Sutton, Wood and Morse are here. Thank you very much. So can I also ask the officers in attendance to state you're present when I call your name? I have Director Net Zero Excellent City Management David Bartram.
Present.
Service Lead Environmental Health and Community Safety Simon Lane.
Present.
Director Finance David Hodgson.
Present.
Thank you very much. And we also have our guest Superintendent Anthony Hart, the local area commander, Exeter East and Mid Devon, Devon and Cornwall Police, making the presentation on the work of the Community Safety Partnership. I can confirm that we're quorate to proceed with the meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Apologies for missing that off. Minutes then to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting. Before I ask for to approve them, are there any comments on the meeting? Would anyone like to raise any issues or comments with those minutes? Okay, then all those in favour of approving them as a true and accurate record?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Every time now I'll sign them when I get back into the Civic Centre, but there might be a lot of paper by the time we do. Declarations of interest. Councillors know to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda, which have not already been included on the register of interest before any discussions take place. Number 4, local government exclusion of the press and public. There should be no part 2 items today, so there's no need to exclude anyone from today's meeting. Item 5 is questions from the public under Standing Order 19. Sharon, am I correct in saying there's no questions from the public this evening?
No questions were received in the deadline time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Which moves us on to item number 6, questions from members of the council under Standing Order 20. And again, Sharon, I'm right to say there's no pre-submitted questions, is that correct?
For this committee, yes, that's correct.
This committee, but there is of course an opportunity should any members of the committee wish to ask any questions of the portfolio holders we have here this evening to do so now. I can't see anyone raising their hand unless Sharon.
I can't either, Chair.
Fantastic. We might finish our meeting in daylight for a first, which will be lovely. Okay, this leaves lots of opportunity for questions for our guest speaker this evening, which is fantastic. I'm pleased we've got to this quite early on because I'm sure there'll be lots of interest from members. So we move on to item number 7, which is a presentation on the Community Safety Partnership. Now, one of the benefits of moving to this new scrutiny system is we kind of have the ability now to invite groups in and ask them kind of what they're up to in the city and how we can not scrutinise them, but just contribute work and see how the council fits in with the good work that they do in and around the city. And several members have raised community safety as an issue, particularly over the last year. I think people's well-being has been top of many councillors' agenda, and I'm not going to preempt too much, but I know in the last year we have had some significant events as well that have taken place in the city, and I'm sure Superintendent will talk a little bit more about those that he can. And it's just a really good opportunity to have a presentation from Superintendent Hart, and I'm sure Simon Lane will chip in as and when in his role as well. So I'm not going to talk for any longer, but I just hope that councillors use this opportunity to really raise any questions, concerns, helpful comments to hopefully improve the relationship and the work between the council and the Community Safety Partnership. I will, of course, have to say at this point we're not in control of this group, so this isn't a scrutiny process. We can't actually scrutinise or recommend that this group do anything in particular, but we can certainly comment and look inwards as well in response to what they say. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Superintendent Anthony Hart and Simon Lane.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to speak here this evening. Really pleased to do so. I've already been introduced really, but I'm Anthony Hart. I'm the local policing superintendent, and I lead Exeter, East and Mid Devon policing area. So I took up the chair of the Community Safety Partnership around a year ago. So I've got a presentation today, 15 to 20 minutes. I've got Simon Lane with me. I'm in the Civic Centre with Simon, and between us we'll divvy up the slides, but please feel free to ask questions as we go. And of course we can ask questions at the end as well. So this slide shows who's on the or who's part of the Community Safety Partnership. So as I've said, I've been the chair for the last year. We've got 2 deputy chairs. So Jeannie Lynch from CoLab recently joined as a deputy chair in January. And then David Bartram, who's also on the line here and hopefully will help out in the presentation as well. Of course, is from Exeter City Council. So it's quite a diverse leadership group on the CSP, but actually there's a real diversity of members of the group as well. Many organisations are represented, and that's really the strength of our CSP in Exeter. It's not just the statutory partners who are part of the group. There are those who don't necessarily need to be there, but we're so grateful that they are, and the contribution that they bring is really great. So as you can see, we've got Devon and Young, Devon Youth Services, the Space, University of Exeter, in Exeter, the Fire Service, Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, EBAC, RD&E, Probation, and Devon County Council. So we meet quarterly as a community safety partnership in terms of the executive group. So that's everyone meeting together. Those are 3-hour meetings. And in those meetings, we look at our action plan for the year, understand progress, as well as how our spend against our budget is going. So, as I've said, whilst the budget is relatively modest, I would say the real strength is from the skills, experience and enthusiasm of all of the members who are part of the Community Safety Partnership. So for the last year, we've had 4 priority areas, and they're shown on this slide. And we'll run through each of those priority areas, explaining the work that's been undertaken. So they are hate crime and extremism, locality-based antisocial behaviour problem solving, sexual violence and domestic violence and abuse, and reducing serious violence and organised crime, including county lines. So those priorities are informed by the the Peninsula Strategic Assessment, as well as understanding the needs from within the Exeter area, and they help to inform those priority areas each year, and they are refreshed each year, and there's an action plan associated with those priority areas which we work against. So the first one of those, and I'll hand over to Simon here for the first 2. So it's hate crime and extremism, followed by antisocial behaviour.
I'll start with a caveat to the slide that I'm about to show. Hate crime in Exeter is relatively low, and that should be remembered. And we do have a positive culture of hate crime being reported. However, we do see, as you'll see from the graph here, spikes in hate crime over the months. And in particular, I'll point out an example of December 2020, when we had a spate of hate graffiti in certain areas of the city, which both the City Council and the police worked very closely in A, getting it removed as quickly as possible, but B, in collecting as much evidence as we can to try and deter, disrupt, and to ultimately capture the individual that is causing the issue. Now, thankfully, we are a tolerant society in Exeter, and that is reflected in the relatively low levels that we've got. With respect to hate crime, there is extremely close working between community safety partners, in particular the council, university and the police, to tackle racial harassment. The Community Safety Partnership is proud to be supportive of the Zero Tolerance to Hate Crime campaign, and it has been widely promoted within the Community Safety Partnership. There has been an intervention clinic that has been piloted for young people who have committed hate crime for the first time. And this is important because punitive sanctions are not necessarily the best way to tackle this problem. Education should be used in the first instance where appropriate. And we have been doing work with local food establishments and taxi drivers in particular to encourage reporting. This is nowhere near over as a project, encouraging that environment where reporting it is in the best interests of not only the individuals concerned, but also the city, is very much something that we are encouraging as a partnership.
I can see we've got one hand up, actually. I don't know, Chair, are you able to manage the hands? I'm not sure if I can see them all of the time.
So I think what we'll do is we'll have questions probably at the end of the presentation. Otherwise, it would be a bit disjointed. If that's all right, if that's all right with you, or we can maybe take the end of each section. So if Simon wants to kind of complete the hate crime extremism one, then we'll take questions on that section. I think that might work.
Yeah, really happy with that. Thank you.
With that.
Okay.
So my final slide on this section on preventing violent extremism. So the threat with respect to terrorism remains substantial, and that's the case across the whole country. That's not specific to Exeter. However, we are not immune as a southwest city from terrorist activity, and we have seen that over the last few years, most notably sort of a decade or so ago with Nicky Riley and the giraffe bombing, but more recently with the arson attack on the synagogue and the stashing of weaponry on the outskirts of the city by a Royal Marine. There is a threat to online radicalisation, and this has increased during the lockdown era. There are a range of ideologies, including international terrorism and extreme right-wing activity, that are prevalent in society, and extremists have actively used the COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter to promote their narrative. As part of our response to this, we held an excellent conference in October 2020, of which a number of members were part of, and there were over 200 professionals across Devon, which had both a former left-wing and right-wing extremist sort of giving their inside view into not only sort of the activities of the groups that they were involved in, but how they became involved, which was very telling of how easy they got sucked into the sort of radicalized way of thinking. So that comes to the end of that section. I don't know if Anthony's got anything else to add to.
No, all that I would say is that hate crime is often the first step in someone exploring extremism. So it's really important, as Simon says, that in the early stages of someone committing hate crime, i.e. if they haven't committed a crime before, that there's a really positive intervention and that we try and move them away from any further offending. So wherever possible, we will of course take a preventative approach to stop any further offending in terms of hate crime, and also to prevent them moving into more extreme ideologies. So I'm happily taking questions on hate crime now.
Fantastic. So I can see Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Councillor Sills. Yes, my question is on hate crimes. When I was an independent member of the Police and Crime Panel back in 2017, the Chief Constable agreed that he would start recording misogyny as a hate crime. Can you tell me if that was actually implemented, and whether you're able to tell us anything about the incidences of misogyny as a hate crime in Exeter, especially in view of, Councillor Sills has already mentioned it, the Lorraine Cox trial that's currently going on, and of course what's happened to Sarah Everard, and the increased interest in making misogynistic crimes like this a hate crime, it's being currently discussed in Parliament. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So misogyny and misandry are both recorded as hate crimes within Devon and Cornwall Police. And I noted that this week the National Police Chiefs Council and the Home Office are suggesting that will become more of a national process. But certainly Devon and Cornwall Police does record those crime types as hate crimes. I do know that levels of reporting are relatively limited across the force area. I don't know specifically for Exeter, but I do know that it will be fairly limited, as I said, as it is across the board. Certainly, we know that hate crime is underreported in total, and we would do everything we possibly can do to try and promote further reporting. We've seen on the slides that Simon presented that there are spikes in terms of reporting at certain times. I would look at any increase in reported hate crime as a positive thing, simply because we know that the levels of reporting are much below where they should be. In terms of crimes against women, of course, they're much higher than we would hope they would be. And through the work of Devon and Cornwall Police, and certainly as part of the Community Safety Partnership, we will continue to promote any further activity that we can, both in terms of assuring women and other vulnerable people in Exeter, making sure they're safe, and promoting recording of crime, because it's only through the promotion of crime that we can hopefully bring those offenders to justice and hopefully give others confidence in further reporting.
Thank you. Councillor Diana Moore.
Thank you. That was a good question. My question sort of relates. I'm just really interested that the Community Safety Partnership operates at quite a high level, and then obviously the police service have their own priorities around delivery. But I get a lot of feedback from residents about not feeling safe in the community. I'm particularly concerned about Black, Asian and minority ethnic members of our community, and also women. And even this morning I was told by a parent that her daughter gets catcalled daily and deals with all sorts of other stuff on a daily basis. I was quite shocked. So how are the agencies working together to not just at this strategic level, but just at a practical level to tackle these issues?
Yeah, so absolutely. So there's really good and close working relationships, operational level in Exeter. The neighbourhood policing team, who will often lead in terms of our response to both hate crime and local antisocial behaviour type issues, that they work in the civic centre. They work alongside Simon Lane's team as a matter of course. So I'd say on a daily basis, there are really good interactions. Speaking from a police perspective, there's a bi-weekly tactical intervention meeting, which the police chair, but partner agencies are able to attend. And in that meeting, we talk about the trends which have occurred over the last couple of weeks, any particular hotspots in terms of crimes that we may be concerned about, and importantly, how we can provide reassurance to members of the community who may be concerned for their own safety, because the kind of behaviours you've talked about are absolutely unacceptable. And we're really committed to reducing those as far as possible and bringing the relevant offenders to justice as well.
Councillor Jemima Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Sills. I have a question about hate crime and then another about extremism. For hate crime, I wondered if you could tell us more about what support is available for people who experience hate crime, and how you make sure that people know how to report it. And then, shall I ask my other one now, or shall I wait and then ask it afterwards?
Go ahead.
Okay, and then for extremism, I noticed that in the city centre there are times when there are armed police. For me, it feels quite shocking, I think, because it's not something we're used to seeing in this country. And I think my feeling around guns is that if there's a gun, somebody is more likely to get shot than if there is no gun. I wondered if this is a direct response to there being a threat, or if it is just a routine thing, because it seems to be before Christmas. I don't know if that's a busier time perhaps, or if it's more a response.
So if I may answer your questions in reverse order, if that's okay. So in terms of the visible presence of armed officers, you're right, it remains really rare. The majority of police officers in Britain aren't armed, and that remains certainly the case in Devon and Cornwall and Exeter. At certain times, armed officers will be very visible, and that is related to the terror threat, which relates to the particular time. But also, if we've got particularly busy areas and the threat is at a certain level, then we have a visible deterrent in place. And it is difficult. Some people, as you say, find the presence of an armed officer upsetting. Equally, we hope that to others it provides a level of reassurance that the police are present and able to respond in the very worst of scenarios, which absolutely we hope doesn't happen. But hopefully that answers your question to some degree. In terms of hate crime and how it's reported, so hate crime can be reported to the police through the usual mechanisms, so on the telephone, via email, text, etc. But absolutely we appreciate that many victims of hate crime won't want to contact the police, and so they can make reports anonymously, and they can do that through an organisation called True Vision. They're also able to report through the Devon and Cornwall Police website now, anonymously as well. And it's really important that we know the levels of hate crime that are happening, even if the victim doesn't want anything done about it. It just helps us to inform our policing response. If someone is willing to give their details in recording a crime or incident, then we'll make a referral to our victim care unit. So that unit is part of the police. It's a gateway to over 80 different support organisations who can provide individual support to victims of crime based on their individual needs. And so there are lots of organisations there who can help. And indeed, the people who work in the victim care unit are skilled in speaking with victims of crime and understanding what their needs are.
I think it's just important to add as well that as a council, we come across matters that haven't been reported. And I've talked about graffiti previously, and we have a very robust system for when we come across that to ensure that we are reporting that and liaising with the police accordingly to make sure that, especially where there's sort of residents involved, that they're getting the follow-up from the neighbourhood policing team with respect to it as well, whilst we are supporting them in the clear-up of the unfortunate graffiti they've experienced.
Councillor Newby.
With regard to armed officers, I've got a different opinion. I'm sorry, old school boy here. I see an armed officer today in town when I was out doing my constitutional. And to me, these guys and girls who carry those weapons are there to put themselves in the front line to protect me. And that makes me feel better. They don't get paid any extra. They do it for us, the people. And after the giraffe bombing, and I've seen some other bombings in London during my time in the fire service, I praised them. Plus the fact that in Devon, I think we've got, and we'll stand to be corrected, I think we've got over 30,000 or 3,000, sorry, people who own shotguns, licensed shotguns, me being one of them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'm conscious that Superintendent isn't going to probably dive into that debate unless he wishes to.
No, the only thing I'd say is, as Councillor Newby says, Devon and Cornwall does have a very high number of registered shotgun holders or firearms holders. They're holding them absolutely legally, but I agree with this point.
Thank you very much. I was worried we were going to get into national gun policy.
No, we're not America.
No, I can't see any other hands raised at this stage. So, Simon, if you'd like to carry on to the chapter.
Okay, so we move on to our second priority as a community safety partnership, which is locality-based antisocial behaviour problem solving. It's probably the one thing that fills our mailboxes the most and fills yours as councillors as well with respect to the work of the community safety partnership. No, my arrows aren't working. So what this slide shows you is how over the course of the week, and this is police data that I'm talking to, but what it shows you is how the nature of reported antisocial behaviour changes in the city depending on the day of the week and the hour. And we've deliberately done it for Exeter as a whole, which is the Exeter sector, which the Exeter sector in policing terms aligns to the Exeter City Council boundaries. And then you've got the neighbourhood city centre team, which is predominantly what is the PSPO area in effect. So sort of the High Street, Sidwell Street, down to Exbridges. So as you can see, there's different demands and challenges during this snapshot of data that was 12 months to the end of August 2020. Obviously, some of that data is not normal times necessarily because we were sort of had a period of lockdown. But it does show the challenges that we're facing across, if you take the whole city, which is on the left-hand side, and just the city centre, it is a challenge to both the police and the council, who have a shared legal duty in antisocial behaviour problem solving. So I just want to give you a snapshot here, and this is talking about sort of the work of the council primarily, and how we work in partnership with others. So as a community safety partnership, one of our key tools is to hold regular antisocial behaviour and action team, which is what ASBAT stands for, to discuss those cases that are complex and multi-agency in nature. So on a monthly basis, we're discussing around 50 to 60 cases across those meetings. And they involve representatives from the residential social landlords, police, the council, our own housing team, and others are invited in for specific cases where they have an involvement in it. So that might be outreach provision, that might be other voluntary sector partners, drug and alcohol, will come in for case specifics. The next point that I make here, and this is a snapshot of the current financial year that we're in. So April 2020 to a week ago, and this will have gone up since. Okay, so on average, as a city council, the Environmental Health Department will deal with around 700 noise complaints in a year. Now, ordinarily, that would be a mixture of residential and commercial noise complaints. The commercial noise complaints being loud music from pubs and clubs, and commercial extraction systems. Over the last 12 months nearly, we have seen a very big increase in the number of noise complaints, but primarily they are domestic related, which has had a massive impact in the work of the team. And we've had to try and assess these noise complaints in a COVID secure way, which has added extra pressure to the staff involved in dealing with it. So I just wanted to give you a snapshot of how that has increased during the last 12 months in particular. In addition to that, there's things like abandoned vehicles, which we're dealing with 160 abandoned vehicle reports a year. A lot of them are not necessarily abandoned, but they're very time consuming in the work that needs to be done to determine whether they are abandoned or not. And that's all work that we have to do. In addition, as a council, we will, just from the environmental health and community safety team alone, will deal with around 250 other ASB issues. Obviously, the colleagues in the council housing team and parks team will be involved in other matters as well, on top of that, which are not necessarily recorded on our system. And we have currently one remote CCTV camera that is deployed to high-risk cases. So this is where we've got a concern for the individuals involved, and it's used as a tool to A, determine what's going on, but B, to protect those that we consider vulnerable on the whole. So just a brief order, we've obviously got the public spaces protection order, and if I go back to the city centre, this is one of the tools that has been deployed. It's not the panacea, it's certainly not going to fix the issues in their entirety, but it's one tool that we have got. So it came into effect in June 2017. Members will recognise that on the 23rd of February, it was renewed at full council for another 12 months from June 2021 to end of May 2022. So what we're covering is things like intoxicating substances, street urination, aggressive begging, and antisocial behaviour in groups. Now, from the deployment until the end of 2020, it hasn't been used necessarily extensively and in a disproportionate manner, but it has been used where it's needed to be used. So 48 fixed penalty notices have been used over the 3.5 years that it's been in action. 366 people were dispersed using the powers, and there have been 20 prosecutions and 2 cautions. the power that is used most often are those that are consuming alcohol in a public place that is defined by the area. But most of the time, that is a means of educating the individuals involved, and compliance more often than not is achieved just through a simple conversation. I just wanted to talk about some of the other things that we've tried to do as a community safety partnership to tackle antisocial behaviour. So during the summer, there was 10 weeks during the summer where the Police and Crime Commissioner provided us with extra money to tackle antisocial behaviour in 2 locations where the police statistics were indicating that there was an issue. So they were sort of in the heart of the city centre, certainly around the Cathedral Green and High Street area, and also down on the quay. Both different types of problems. So the key in particular was around sort of youngsters drinking alcohol, jumping in the river and canal, potentially causing issues that way in the city centre. Part of that was the high footfall, COVID conditions, unusual antisocial behaviour and crime that is within the area. So over that time, the marshals that were deployed logged over 1,100 reports during that 10-week period. We were able to link reports into key partners. So where there were outreach issues, it went straight to the outreach team. Where there were litter issues, and it was passed straight to the Parks and Green Spaces team to tackle and graffiti, etc. Interventions included a range of things, from aggressive begging, drugs, youngsters swimming in the canal, homeless interaction, providing medical assistance, and educating around street drinking. Again, they had no enforcement powers. It was very much a engagement and persuasion methodology that was applied. So things that we are looking to do going forward. So we are doing some work on sort of how we can tackle antisocial behaviour going forward. And this is not the extensive list. This is just some pieces that we are currently got in motion. So we're looking to develop a strategy to look at individual problem solving with those that have got more complex problems, and sort of need wider help to tackle the individuals. And what we're looking to try and do is have those action plans involve the individuals themselves in a new approach that we're looking to take. We're looking to purchase a new mobile CCTV camera for the CSP. So the one we've currently got is quite antiquated and not the easiest thing to deploy, and technology, to say the least, has moved on quite a bit since its purchase. We will have to review the Public Spaces Protection Order during the next 12 months because we only got a 1-year extension. We're looking at devising a scheme at how we can tackle high-strength alcohol. So again, it's something we have looked at before, but we need to look at again because the city has moved on. We're looking to establish a more sustainable model for the help zone, which is something that seeks to minimise A&E admissions and prevent resources being tied up in A&E unnecessarily. We're looking to promote and expand the current alternative giving scheme. Now, this is not something that council and police are going to be doing, but it's how we can support partners who are very much driving this scheme forward. And we're looking at what outcomes we can lay down to measure the success of our actions over the next 12 to 24 months. So those of you who are councillors in and around the university or live in that area will know about Freshers Week well. So it is an area where the Community Safety Partnership does work extremely effectively. So yes, for the 6th year, we are going to be pursuing a multi-agency approach this September, which will involve partners from not only the University Police and Environmental Health, but also from the licensed trade themselves. We are going to be more residential focused this year, as we were last year. So we're not going to be pulled back into the city centre by having more licensed premises open, or hopefully have more licensed premises open come September. But we will be seeking to deploy the resources in the city centre with the help of our partners from the help zone and the street pastors on some nights. So that's the end of antisocial behaviour, Chair, and I think there might be some questions.
Thanks very much, Simon. Let's go to Councillor Owen. I saw your hand first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Simon, you made reference a couple of times to the remote CCTV camera, which I'm sure is of interest to most councillors, certainly in the inner settings in the city area. Now, I'm sure from my experience, and I expect it's the same with other councillors, there's a great demand for use of the CCTV camera, and whilst it's being remote and it can move, it can only be in one place at one time. I'm sure councillors would love to have more than one remote CCTV camera available. I was pleasantly surprised to see on your subsequent slide reference to a new one. I thought, well, that sounds good. Of course, it's a replacement one rather than an additional, which is a shame. So would it be, my question is, would it be reasonable to assume that the City Council or the Community Safety Partnership, say, would feel there is a case for an additional camera? And if so, is the stumbling block there purely one of funding, or are there other issues involved? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the first part, I'll just clarify, we prioritise the use of the camera based on threat, risk and harm. So, we are looking at those antisocial behaviour cases at the top end of the scale. I know councillors, would like them to look at a variety of different issues in parks and public spaces. We have to deploy that in a overt manner because we cannot conduct covert surveillance. So there are a lot of challenges, and it has to be done, in a controlled manner. Yes, we could benefit from more mobile cameras, and that is something that we are certainly looking at funding opportunities to try and increase the number of cameras. However, that is dependent on sort of having that funding, but there's the ongoing costs. So if you've got a camera at the end of a fibre optic line, a lot of the costs have been borne, and most of it is sort of just the case of if the camera goes wrong, there's a decision to be made. Whereas with a mobile CCTV camera, there is an ongoing cost to pay for, in effect, the 4G wireless connectivity, which you need at both ends of the systems. You need it at the camera end and you need it at the receiving end, sort of either on a laptop or a computer. So that actually is quite a costly revenue that needs to be found, which obviously the council and the police do not necessarily have at their disposal at the moment. But that's not, we are looking at opportunities at the moment. I can't sort of go into, we're still trying to shape what those opportunities look like and whether there is potential to seek funding from the government. And that's certainly something that, there are some schemes that the Home Office have out at the moment, and we're looking at our eligibility for those, which may actually help us in this area.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Newby.
Thank you, Chair. Am I on? Yes. Simon, is the help zone still in the same position it was when Steve Stewart and I went to give hand some years back over quite a few Saturday nights? Is it still in the same place? And is it still manned by the Volunteer St John personnel?
Well, it depends. It's been in two locations.
Oh, right.
So it's Mary Archie Street is the where we are using now. There was a time when it was at the top of 4th Street. However, we have trialled a sort of more mobile approach, to the help zone. which we were just in the process of trying to iron out when COVID hit, actually, and to be able to be sort of more responsive where demand is on particular nights, because it very much does shift in the evening and nighttime economy as to what venue or what area of the city is more popular on what night.
So does that mean, coming back with a second question, I'm sorry, Chair, does that mean have you been looking at something like an old bus to utilise as a mobile unit?
No. Well, in terms of a mobile unit, we were. It was a deployment of St John's proper mobile vehicle,
right,
for the job. Yes, they're Plymouth and Bournemouth, as two examples, have utilised a converted bus for such a purpose. Unfortunately, we have nowhere near the funding available to us to be able to go down that route at the moment. And as I say, it is the evening and nighttime economy does change quite a bit depending on what month it is. So the footfall in the city centre in early January and the end of July and August is traditionally relatively low compared with the second and third week of September, for instance.
Is it something that we could look at? I mean, Stagecoach is starting to look at electric buses. Could we not ask them to donate to one? Am I pushing the boat out too much here? But don't ask, you don't get.
I will look at my director, who's also responsible for fleet and net zero.
Has he had a heart attack yet or not?
I would just say that
Stagecoach
are definitely looking at electric buses. They are some way off that at the moment in terms of the charging facilities. So I'm not sure that opportunity will be open to us anytime soon. But as you say, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Could we ask then? Just throw the net out. Let's see what we get. Throw the net out for me. Go on. Be brave.
Yeah,
I know you are.
I will certainly talk to them. Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can see Simon going down the high street in a nice.
I've got a TV licence, boys.
Councillor Diana Moore.
Thank you. I've got 4 points, if that's okay. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your work, particularly around the key. I'm sure Councillor Sills would agree that last summer was a bit of a nightmare for residents who lived around there. So thank you for that. And that needs to be couched in what I'm saying next, is that the deployment of the street marshals took quite a while because funding had to be applied for, and that came from the Police and Crime Commissioner. So that was very difficult because it was such a slow response to like a really urgent situation. But what I'm really wanting to, this really highlighted for me the fact that there doesn't seem to be much money for neighbourhood solutions to problems around antisocial behaviour and how communities can respond. So they had to wait for funding. The street marshals and other communities have spoken to me about drugs and keeping people out of the alleys between rows of terraces. And so, finding money for those sorts of projects to try and address those is really difficult. So I just wanted to provide that feedback. So I had a question about the PSPO. You won't know the answer at the moment, so maybe it could be sent afterwards, but I'm really interested to know about of those can't think of the right word, of the figures that you gave. Do you know how many people with no fixed abode or have no recourse to public funds or were living in temporary accommodation? And is there an issue there for the Community Safety Partnership to be looking at in terms of how the PSPO and its use is relating to those groups in the community? My next point is sort of related. Does the Community Safety Partnership have a view, or would it be looking at licensing issues, for example, for around off licenses and shops that sell alcohol, because over this year, I've observed shops selling alcohol from 6 o'clock in the morning and extending their licenses late into the night. So it's pushing at both ends. So do you think the problem will change, rather than everyone going down the pub, everyone goes down the shop, and that will change the nature of that problem? And the last point is, on your action plan, you've talked about individual action plans for people who may be perpetrators of antisocial behaviour, but I'm wondering how you think you might engage communities in responding to antisocial behaviour and working together to address that. You know, what tools do you think that there could be to do that, and how can you involve the community and provide, you know, helping with positive solutions? Thank you.
Okay, I'll and apologies, you might have to jog me because I don't have a pen and paper to hand, so I'm going by memory. In terms of the Public Spaces Protection Order, I believe I have previously provided you, or I've certainly provided some information with regard to the no fixed abode part of that, which, yes, we would have, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. In terms of information regarding whether people are living in temporary accommodation, etc., no, without spending a massive amount of time researching each individual's address, that is not something that we would capture in that sort of sense, unless they are sort of known temporary accommodation to us, and obviously that has a wide meaning in its own right. In terms of the off license side of things,
sorry, Simon, the third element was people who have no recourse to public funds. That was again, do you keep that data as well? Because you did kindly provide me that a couple year before last, but it's this is another area of interest.
Yeah, again, I would not. That's not something that's captured. I mean, I wouldn't have a clue, and it's certainly not information that we have any need or legal duty to capture, whether people have got recourse to public funds.
Sorry, Simon.
Sorry, Chair.
No, sorry, I thought you finished. Do carry on.
Well, I was going to move on to the other questions actually, but
no,
so
carry on.
Going on to the licensing question. Obviously, the Licensing Act 2003 was very much written around businesses being responsible and licensing kicking in where there is a need to challenge a premise in not being responsible, and ultimately that's the job of the licensing committee and a subcommittee to listen to representations that are brought before it to determine whether a license should be revoked, changed, or additional conditions be put on it to deal with the issue that has been brought before them. So in terms of that, you know, unless there are grounds under the licensing objectives, the licensing authority cannot refuse the grant of a license. You know, yes, that has led to the fact that licensed premises trading hours have got longer and longer and longer, and that has caused issues in terms of not only sort of how the police and the council can respond to those issues, but also for communities as a whole. In terms of, do I think that there's going to be a shift away from your traditional sort of wet drinking establishment, more to the off-sale trade? I don't know is probably the honest answer. Anecdotally, I've heard some people say that, you know, they've discovered how much that they have spent or saved, during the last 12 months from not spending as much time down the pub, and therefore that has made them rethink. And yes, the public health stats that there are nationally, do show that there was a problem nationally with regard to lone drinking at home prior to the events of the last 12 months. So yeah, it's something very much that we are aware of, and we need to look at it. But what I would say is, where there is clear evidence of a licensed premise acting irresponsibly, then I would encourage members of the public to make an application, and they have to make an application that strikes at the licensing objectives, and ask for a review to be called and present evidence accordingly to a licensing committee that is formed. You'll have to remind me, sorry, Councillor, what was your the next question?
Sorry, the other questions were around involving communities in local solutions to antisocial behaviour and some sort of objective for doing that, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, my first answer would be that I would love to do more, and I would love to have a lot more time and a lot more resource at my disposal from a city council point of view to do a lot more of this activity. The fact is, we don't have that. We're having to do what we can with the limited resource we've got, and as I've shown in the slide earlier, that demand is going up from us as a council. However, that doesn't stop us. We are looking at certain things that we can do and how we can tap into existing structures. One of the things that, in fact, I've been having a conversation with today is how we can look to establish strong community watch schemes in the city as a whole, over the next 12 to 24 months. And I've had a really, really good conversation with the Devon and Cornwall Community Watch Coordinator about some ideas around that, because ultimately it's not the statutory partners that are going to solve all these problems. It is going to be communities themselves. And one of the things that I've said over many years is, where communities take pride and own their space, problems are solved to a lot greater extent, because either behaviours are modified, or the people that are causing the harassment, alarm or distress in those areas tend to disappear because they themselves feel uncomfortable with being there. So, that's something really that we need to work on, is how do we strengthen communities to be able to solve their problems to a large extent themselves, so that the statutory agencies are dealing with the harder problems and more complex problems, which need more of a multi-agency response. I don't know whether Anthony's got anything to add to that.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree, Simon. I think where we can empower local people to kind of own the issue and have pride in their local area, then we will generally see that crime levels are lower. But there's more we can do. I think a partnership approach is the way to do it. We'll do what we can through the community safety partnership, but it does come down to prioritising our focus on areas of greatest need.
Thank you both very much. Just before you move on to your next part, I'd just like to say a kind of a thanks to the police, because I've been dealing with Inspector Arliss throughout the whole lockdown, really, and I think particularly down here we've really struck a balance between education and enforcement, and it's been very difficult, hasn't it, as the months have gone on and people naturally have got more tired of isolation. And I know as we go forward, and there will be people, myself included, having 5 friends in my garden, having a very nice time over the Easter holidays, because it will be allowed. And I'm sure you'll strike that balance again in terms of, antisocial behaviour noise levels. I think, we're not out of the woods yet at all, but when we do get there, I know you'll continue to kind of do the good work you've done. And I know you won't come down too heavily on people having a drink or a barbecue in their garden over the Easter break, I'm sure. But thank you for all your hard work. It's been tough, hasn't it?
Thank you. Chair, before we go on, I just wonder about time. I think we've taken over our 15 to 20 minutes. I'm happy to continue, but I don't want to take liberties.
Well, why don't you present the next two sections and then do questions after those two? Does that sound sensible?
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, I'll get going. So the first of the second group of priority areas. So the first is sexual violence and domestic violence and abuse. So this is a really important area of focus, only highlighted by recent incidents in London through tragic murder of Sarah Everard this week, and of course the recent murder of Lorraine Cox in Exeter. So this has been a priority for the Community Safety Partnership over recent years, and of course remains so both now and looking forward into the next year. There's an awful lot of multi-agency work which takes place in this area, always more that can be done. So the slide that you can see at the moment relates to domestic abuse. It's a trend line over time. I provide it simply so that you're cited on how reported domestic abuse crimes look in Exeter. Domestic abuse is absolutely underreported, and this shows only crimes. So there are incidents as well which are reported to police which don't reach the threshold for crime, which sit above and beyond the data that you can see here. But what I would say is the trend has broadly continued over time. It is rising. I would welcome any rise in reported domestic abuse crime, actually, because, as I said, we know it is underreported. I can say that around 72% of our victims in Exeter are female. The next slide is a similar trend line, this time for sexual offences. So you can see it is broadly moving down. The graph is from April 17 on the left to February 2021 on the right. Of note, in the lockdown periods, so April 2020 and into 2021, you'll see that levels of reported crime are much lower. And I think that reflects the fact that the nighttime economy isn't open, and people aren't out consuming alcohol. And so I think that's kind of a natural hypothesis to draw from that data. In terms of sexual offences, 88% of our victims in Exeter are female. So the next slide shows or describes some of the activity which is underway through the Community Safety Partnership in conjunction with our with the Safer Devon Partnership. So the Exeter East and Mid Devon Sexual Violence and Domestic Violence and Abuse Forum meets quarterly. Involves support agencies, police, early helps. There's a real multi-agency approach to that. And as I've said, those agencies that we work with always report higher levels than the police are aware of. We know that victims go to those support agencies, they may not actually report to police. So, of course, we try and promote reporting to the police, but the important thing is that people are seeking out help and that we provide routes that people can gain help wherever possible. In relation to COVID, we've undertaken work in providing safe spaces in pharmacies and local supermarkets. And there was also a campaign on radio throughout November and December 2020 to raise awareness of what was out there. The complexity of domestic abuse in particular throughout COVID became really clear. We know that victims may be less likely to come forward because they're in a lockdown scenario at home with the offender. And so we had to provide routes by which they could gain support in different means than they ordinarily would outside of a lockdown period. So this slide just provides a little bit more context around the approach, both within the Community Safety Partnership and a little bit wider. So Devon County Council leads on our SVDVA strategy, and other community safety partnerships work with us through the Safer Devon Partnership to deliver it. There's a new bill in place, as it says here, which does put an onus on Devon County Council to support those victims and their children who are subject to domestic abuse to make sure they've got safe accommodation. And one of the roles of the Community Safety Partnership is also to undertake domestic homicide reviews. And so that's when a domestic homicide has taken place, a referral can be made, an independent chair will carry out a review, and it's a multi-agency review, and recommendations are made for those agencies who've been involved in the lead up to that domestic homicide. And finally, on that slide, so we work really closely with CoLab, and Jeannie Lynch from CoLab is one of our deputy chairs as well. So one of our priorities for next year is to ensure that we're focused on the exploitation of vulnerable women, especially those who may be street attached or street homeless in Exeter. And of course, there may be some links to county lines there, and I'll come on to county lines in the next slide, actually. So our fourth priority area is reducing serious violence and organised crime, including county lines. Dangerous drug networks and associated serious violence are priorities within Devon and Cornwall Police's control strategy, and our control strategy outlines 6 areas where we know we must make positive intervention because we know there's a definite threat there. The drug supply routes which come into Exeter are county lines, and associated with them does come high harm, much of which may not be seen to the general public. So there's a really strong partnership approach, a 4P plan, or a 4P approach is outlined there. So we gather our activity under 4 headings around preparing, preventing, protecting, and pursuing. There's a plan under each of those areas around what we do to make sure we're intervening where we can. The next slide shows rates of violence in Exeter, again over that same time period, April 2017 to February 2021. And you can see there again a similar trend to that which I described previously. During the lockdown periods, April 2020 and into 2021, a reduction in levels of reported violence. And we're on a downward trend at the moment. I'm sure that once lockdown restrictions are eased, we'll see that trend line go upwards, unfortunately, as levels of offending increase. So in terms of the violence we see in Exeter, as I've said, it was an intelligence-led approach. Operation Sceptre relates to knife crime, and we've had knife amnesty previously. We undertake test purchasing with trading standards and undertake a number of educational inputs to inform young people around the dangers of carrying knives and associated violence. Op Uchi is a police operation by which we learn of knives which are likely to be imported, and we actively visit addresses and seize weapons wherever we can. Op Protractor is a related operation related to antisocial behaviour amongst young people and violence. As I said, we take a multi-agency approach to intervening with those young people. Will be preventative wherever possible. That's the most important thing. I think I've made this point already. So this is around the trend of the link between violence and the evening and nighttime economy. But again, this slide shows some of the activity which we undertake in terms of licensing checks, targeted patrols, and of course the great work which takes place through Best Bar None, which is the licensed trade working with council police and others to make sure that the nighttime economy is as safe as it can be for everyone who's enjoying it. Okay, my last couple of slides cover the drugs element, the county lines element of our fourth priority area. And so Exeter does experience a high volume of county lines and drug supply. I think that reflects the the real positive approach to disruption that we've had in the city. Agencies work together, we identify those who are vulnerable, we take quick action to safeguard those who are vulnerable, those whose addresses may have been taken over or cuckooed, and to safeguard them. As a result, we've had some really positive outcomes in terms of offenders taken to court. Unfortunately, when we remove a drug line, a new drug line emerges, and so we're constantly gathering intelligence and constantly disrupting. We have seen children recruited as dealers, and our priority is always to safeguard those children, whether they're from Exeter or from other parts of the country. Some of the antisocial behaviour elements associated with that drug supply does have a knock-on effect, and Simon's already touched on much of those that we may see in the city centre. So use of Class A drugs, associated begging. Finally, I've touched on our 4 Ps approach. It's outlined there. And again, as with all parts of policing, we rely on information from the public, information from our partners. So we've developed a partner agency information sharing form, which just makes it's as easy as possible for partner agencies to share information with the police around those who may be vulnerable, those who may be exploited, or any similar criminality. That allows us to understand the pitch to the best possible way and take quick action where we can. So I've rattled through those slides, I know, but that's covered the 4 priority areas of the CSP. I'll happily take any further questions.
Thanks very much for a really interesting presentation. Yeah, we'll wrap this up with some final questions. So, Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you. Obviously, these are big topics, and we're talking about the biggest topic of the moment that is in the national press. And I'm sure you're aware that the Office of National Statistics survey was reported on today in The Guardian, which further shows the nature of sexual assault and rape, with only 16% of women reporting them and 19% of men. And as we know, there's an underreporting which you've acknowledged, and we also know there has been a scandal about the number of prosecutions in the last couple of years. But this report says that 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual assault, and I've been one of them, after the age of 16. So this is a big issue. Given the prominence of it, what is the partnership going to do about trying to change the culture in our society in Exeter, where rape and sexual assault, both men and women, is seen as acceptable and a lark or whatever it is? I mean, you've said that we need a multi-agency approach to this. I don't think, given the time that we've got at this meeting, this would probably need a spotlight review or something, certainly given what's recent events in Exeter. But, very briefly, I don't want to prolong this meeting longer than is necessary, but, these are big issues of the moment. And we do need to start looking at this again, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I absolutely acknowledge the points you made and wholeheartedly agree. Levels of reported sexual violence, domestic abuse and violence, we know are much lower than they should be. Unfortunately, this is not a new issue. The sad murder of Sarah Everard has brought it to the fore once again. But as I say, we must do more. What you've described, is unacceptable. It's some of these things that there are some quick things which we should do, and each of the statutory agencies have got responsibility to take those forward. As a community safety partnership, we will as well. Some of them are societal and more longer term, and we've got a shared responsibility to try and influence the culture, as you've said, to try and make it a healthier one, a safer one for everyone living in Exeter. As you say, it is a very big topic, so to try and kind of talk it through in more detail now is difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's a very, really pertinent issue, and I just don't feel we can actually do it justice this evening. But I'm sure it's something that the partnership and the council will be looking into. Are there any further questions? Councillor Packham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for a really interesting presentation. I was just wanting to pick up on Councillor Atkinson's points, which I thought were really well made. And you referred about to the partnership trying to encourage reporting. And I know we've just said that we can't go into much detail tonight, but I just wondered if you may be able to expand a bit on that. I think underreporting is one of the serious issues in terms of tackling the culture which Councillor Atkinson alludes to. So I just wondered if it would be possible to expand, albeit briefly, on that.
Yes, so I think, and I haven't got the detailed action plan in front of me, but in terms of, we've undertaken, so as I touched on in the presentation, undertaken kind of radio campaigns and raising awareness through avenues by which we know people who may be subject to domestic abuse have access to, so supermarkets, pharmacies, etc. Places where we know people have continued to go through the lockdown period, so that they can continue to go there, but seek advice in a way which that they perhaps wouldn't have done previously. So it's about that awareness raising in locations where we know that victims may attend. I think as we move out of lockdown and COVID focus, we need to do more around promoting the fact that many people are subject to domestic abuse or sexual violence, and to give them the confidence to come forward. Some of this is about giving people the confidence that the police will do something about it and that there's support out there. But actually, it's that communication point which is the important one. Understanding how we can kind of make a link with victims so that they have the confidence to come forward, start a conversation. Many victims or may not want the police to be involved, but it's so important that they understand where they can gain help. And that is really part of our action plan to improve the situation.
I think the thing I'll just add there, Anthony, as well, is that we're working with a wider partnership here. So Exeter is a place that people like to go, whether it to enjoy the daytime economy and in particular the nighttime economy. So we have got a lot of people coming in. So it's very important that this is not just something that we're working on in isolation just in Exeter, that we're working with colleagues in East Devon, Mid Devon in particular, where we've got the formal partnership, but then wider afield as under the umbrella of the Safer Devon partnership, because it's having those consistent messages and that consistent plan, which is going to help going forward, as opposed to each individual CSP within the Devon area trying to do their own thing.
Thank you both very much. And yeah, I think it's right that we've discussed this actually this evening in light of the weekend's events. And yeah, you know, we mentioned it at school every day this week, and it's been something I think that it's a cultural change we have to bring about now from a very young age. And it's everybody's responsibility, isn't it, to tackle these really quite complex and deeply rooted issues. And obviously we've been affected by it as a city, very sadly. So I can't see more questions. So I will thank both Superintendent Hart and Simon for their time this evening. It's been a really good discussion to have. And yeah, well, and I'm sure we'll continue in the months and years ahead. So thanks for all the work that the partnership do. And that's all on the agenda this evening. So this is the last meeting before PERDA. So I'm sure I can't work out who's up for election, who isn't, but Thank you for all your time and your efforts this municipal year, and we'll see you in the new one. And I think the meeting's in June, so I'm not going to say it'll be in person. Who knows? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
I think Councillor
Thanks.
Owen is leaving
Bye.
for the last time, Councillor Sills.
Oh, Councillor Owen.
Ah,
Well,
and Councillor Lyons, is that right?
Yes. Yes, I've decided at 77 I'm too old to carry on.
Rubbish.
Oh,
Rubbish.
well,
Rubbish.
maybe we should give those two outgoing councillors a big round of applause.
I think so.
Thank you, Luke. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Keith, thank you for your chairing of licensing. You've been brilliant, mate. And Rachel, it's been lovely working with you.
Thank
you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I'll draw this meeting formally to a close before you all get too emotional.
So, yeah, I've got to go and feed the cat who is starving.
I've got to go and feed
Chair.
myself. Thank you very much. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.